I'm not going to sit down. I don't need to sit down. I don't need a microphone either. You can all hear me, right?
Welcome, Gary. Well, do we have mics?
I don't need a microphone.
I was going to say, I'm a loud talker, too.
loud and
I don't even know
obnoxious.
if we need those. I will warn you in advance, Gary, I've taught in this classroom before, and I've definitely taken a tumble backwards off these steps
They'll all
before.
warn me. They'll all be like, no, I don't get walking back.
Hold on, can we kill this? Oh, one sec. And if we can bring up house lights, that'd be awesome.
This is it? More lights, really?
Yeah.
Good God. Oh, that's what they look like.
Excellent! Gary Tierney. Oh my gosh, it is awesome to have you here. Okay, so how did you first become involved with this? You'd worked with Anthony Hickox before, right?
Yeah, well, I'll give you the background of it. So, Hellraiser and Clive Barker have a relationship with a guy called Bob Keane. Bob Keane was the special makeup effects designer on the original Hellraiser, and Clive and Bob became tight friends. And Bob had a company called Image Animation. Image Animation did the effects for Hellraiser 1, Hellraiser 2, Nightbreed, Waxworks, which Tony Hickox directed. And I, as a 20-year-old, less than that even, I was a 19-year-old, saw Hellraiser, saw Pinhead and said, who did that, how did they do it, and I want to do that. So I struggled my way. I was working for Chris Tucker at the time, who did The Elephant Man. And I was doing the makeup for Phantom of the Opera, the stage show.
Oh, nice.
And got a job just as Hellraiser 2 had been completed. And I came into the studio working for Bob. And Image Animation as a studio was based at Pinewood Studios in London. And the talent that went through that shop, I cannot tell you, it was incredible. Not me, but the amount of people who came from that shop. Stephen Norrington, who directed Blade, worked in that shop, worked for me. Paul Catlin, who did The Pillar. Dave Elsey, who got an Oscar for Wolfman with Rick Baker. He designed the J.P. Monroe Cenobite, the one that
piston one.
Mark Coulier and myself did the Joey Cenobite. Mark Coulier went on to get an Oscar for Iron Lady and for Hotel Budapest and for also the what's the Willem Dafoe movie last year, the weird one.
Poor Things.
Poor Things.
Yes.
God knows why that got the makeup Oscar. I don't know how that got a makeup Oscar over the makeup that Kazoo did for Bradley Cooper. God only knows. But there you go. Hey, I'm on the argument. So I went to work at Image Animation and was a huge fan of Hellraiser. A frothing 22-year-old. The script came in for Hellraiser 3. We were all like, yes, finally, it's going to be so cool. And originally, the film was supposed to be directed by Tony Randall, who did Hellraiser 2. And I don't know if you guys, what kind of fans you are of Hellraiser, but I've always felt that Hellraiser 1 and 2 feel like they were shot back to back.
Mm-hmm.
They feel so similar. And it's interesting to wonder what Tony Randall would have done with Hellraiser 3.
And
I
he
don't
does-
think it would have been that film.
He does sequels really well. Like, he has always been that guy who
Yeah.
can kind of step in and be like,
But
I get what this is going
Hellbound
for.
feels really, you could
Great.
take Hellraiser 1 and 2 and put them side by side and they feel the same, they look the same, they smell the same. Hellraiser 3 is very different, but production had a problem with Tony Randall. They started falling out. And I think Bob Keane actually was instrumental in getting Tony Hickox the gig because we'd just done Waxworks Lost in Time, that amazing movie, and check it out. Although if you watch Waxworks Lost in Time, you can see a lot of
I was
similarities
going to
to
say,
it.
I kind of like that
Of
one,
course you
Gary.
do, 'cause
I don't
you're
know
a
what you're
big
talking
fan of
about.
this.
Kinda
Look,
digging
you were
that
12
one.
years old. 12-year-olds love this movie, you know.
My taste now, Gary.
It's good though. It's good. Yeah. It's, but I mean, there is a waft of cheese to this movie.
I love cheese.
So I think Tony Hickox. It's funny watching it and remembering what was being discussed at the time, like the Kirsty Cotton sequences. Terminator Judgment had just come out, so those sequences where she's being interviewed for the I'm telling you, it's pain, it's box. It's very similar to the Sarah Connor stuff when she's being interviewed about the Terminator.
Yep.
Tony was very good at kind of regurgitating stuff and mirroring it. And bless his heart, Tony Hickox actually only passed away last year.
Yeah.
And he was a great guy to work with. He was a lot of fun. He was crazy. I mean, he would spend his entire paycheck while we were shooting a movie, and he would have parties, and he was a rock and roll kind of guy, and he always shot the edit. That was the strange thing. He,
That takes some skill.
it does take some skill, but it also annoys producers because it means you can't manipulate it. You can't manipulate it in the edit. Exactly.
It is what it is.
As filmmakers, you'll know if you're shooting the edit and you're not doing any coverage around that, then it means that when you get to the edit room, it's got to be cut a certain way.
Was there ever a version of the script that was following along with the Julia Frank mythos? That like
No,
was
not that I know of.
It was
Peter-
always kind of like to pick it up and move it.
Peter, who was as sick as a dog tonight, I have to apologise on Peter's behalf. He desperately wanted to be here. I drove him here, and literally on the way, he had to say, "You have to pull over, Gary. I'm going to throw up." And literally, I'm sitting on the 101 freeway with Peter outside the car, like.
He did not look
It
good when
was
he rolled into that
crazy.
parking lot.
And Peter played the bartender as well.
Yeah.
He's Barbie in the movie, so yeah, Peter would have had some good tales, and he's a great raconteur. I don't know. I think this is pretty much the original script that Peter and Tony came up with. It wasn't going to follow the Julia Frank story. It was literally about the pillar being created and what would happen from there.
So you get put on the movie. What is kind of the first project you get assigned on? Was it the Cherry Cenobite, or was
No,
it?
I came in literally as like a geeky kid and I was given the box, so I had to make all the boxes and do all of that. But quickly during the production, I established myself pretty well.
Keep talking. I'm getting water.
Sure. I established myself and got to be supervisor of the shop, so I started designing the effects. And then when everybody was sent out on location, which was shot in North Carolina, I had to stay back and handle another little film called Candyman. So I was designing all the effects and building all the effects for Candyman, which shot literally weeks after Hellraiser 3 did. No, I'm good, thank you. And then, a lot of people don't know this, but Hellraiser 3 didn't have a home. There was no distributor at the time for the movie. So there is actually footage of Doug Bradley in the pillar, in those close-ups when he's doing the whole... kind of like,
Boy.
Look what, what's lying out. You could probably take that from him, it's lying bleeding at your feet. There are cuts of him speaking to distribution houses all over the world, literally going, "Bob Shea, new line, do you want to represent Hellraiser?" Bob Weinstein, Miramax Films, you should have Hellraiser. And literally, there's a whole pitch reel where Doug had to do all of these lines into the camera. And for better or for worse, it was Miramax at the time. It was Bob Weinstein who took over the production of, took over the distribution of Hellraiser. They bought the rights. And then immediately requested that we amp up all the kills in the boiler room. And there's more scary stuff with Joey, and the bondage and the Cenobite creator. So we found ourselves 6 months later on Cahuenga Boulevard at a little studio. And for me, my dream at the time, I was 22. And my dream was I had three dreams, I had three lofty ambitions in life. One was to work on a Hellraiser movie. One was to work with Clive Barker. And one was to work in Los Angeles. I mean, I'm a kid from Burntwood, the north of Birmingham. So the idea of working in movies and working in Hollywood, it was like saying you wanted to go and live on Mars. It was never going to happen. So all of a sudden I find myself on a plane flying to Los Angeles to work on a Hellraiser movie and apply Pinhead. And lo and behold, the first day I'm there, Clive Barker walks up and goes, "Hello, I'm Clive Barker. How are you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know who the fuck you are. You're fucking Clive Barker." And then I got to get directed by Clive Barker. And I apologise for what I'm about to tell you, but, please forgive me. But I'm going to give it you word for word, blow by blow, how it was directing with Clive Barker as you video me telling this story. So in the movie you saw there's like a weird creature that comes out of the floor that was the Cenobite creator. I'm puppeteering that, and we were shooting on a set that's elevated so I can be underneath it. So I'm down under a set with plastic bags on me with my hand on this weird little rubbery monster. And Clive Barker decided to be on set that day and to actually direct. So everyone like you, the crew are there, and lighting people and technicians and everybody, and I'm underneath the thing, and it's like, and action, and I'm wiggle, this thing's covered in slime. And I do my best to do this, and all of a sudden, it's like, cut. Gary! And I go, yes? He goes, Gary! And I stick my head out the hole, and there's Clive Barker, the great Clive Barker. And he looks at me and he says, "Gary, it's not moving correctly. You need to do something differently." And I go, "Well, yeah, what do you want?" He says, "Well, you know when you're jerking off. Sorry, Clive? You know when you're jerking off, and you're jerking it, and you're just about to come? I don't know. Yes? That's what I want. Okie dokie. So that was me being directed Clive Barker. So that's one of my great memories of that movie. He's the whole crew just staring at you and going, oh, there you go, right. And then we did, and also the other great thing was for me, was that I got to do the skinned girl makeup on Joel Kershaw.
Which was great.
Oh,
How did that come off so quickly? Like, that was a beautiful effect.
Oh, thank you very much. Pure unbridled skin. It's actually the Julia makeup from Hellraiser 2. We took all the pieces.
Brilliant.
And then we were introduced to a snowboarder, a very skin, athletic girl, Jill Kershaw. And we spent a day creating the suit. And then the next day I applied all of the pieces to her and we shot the whole sequence. I told you before that my 3 dreams were work in LA, work on a Clive Barker movie, and work with Clive Barker and work on a Hellraiser movie. I'm also a huge heavy metal fan, and a huge fan of a guitarist called Michael Schenker. And as I'm doing this makeup on the set, they're saying on the radio, and you won't remember this, many of you, but there was a radio station here called Pirate Radio for a long time. And they were saying, playing at the Roxy Theatre on Thursday night, Michael Schenker. And I was like, I can't believe Michael Schenker's playing this week in Los Angeles. And the following day after I'd done the skin girl makeup, Jill came in and she said, I have a present for you. It was a ticket to go and see Michael Schenker. And they gave me the night off. So I remember calling my girlfriend the day after I'd seen Michael Schenker working in Los Angeles, working with Clive Barker on a Hellraiser movie. And I said, I'm going to die on the plane on the way home. I'm being set up for death, clearly. So there's no way. All my dreams have now have come to fruition. But of course, so that was Hellraiser. And then after that, I went on to then do Hellraiser 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Designed all the FX posts of that. And then do other films like Blade and Gone Girl and all kinds of stuff. So, you know, yeah.
I'm going to back us up to the box.
Yes.
Because this is always the question, is like, why can't I have a box that does all that cool stuff? Now, the very first time I met you,
You know this. You know the answer to this.
I know the answer, but they don't. So the very first time I met Gary, I was producing this show for Nerdist TV called Fangoria's Blood and Guts. And we would go into different effects houses and we would interview the different effects artists on what they do. And I walk in and I'm like, holy shit, you're Gary Tudorcliffe. I got Hellraiser tattoos on my leg. And try not to fangirl again. And but immediately you were like, let me show you. And you produced
I was like, if you like Hellraiser boxes, then look at
it was
this.
like a crate of all the different boxes. And he plops it down on the table. And then he goes, here's the one that turns this way. And here's the one that does this thing. And this one becomes a knife. So can you talk a little bit about how you had to create the different boxes?
Well, it was pre-CGI, you know. It was on the verge of CGI. I mean, oddly enough, this was 92, so Terminator had just come out. So that's why we have those awful kind of morph effects, like the bicycle turning into that and kind of bad CGI stuff, because it was like, we need that. Clearly that's what should be in a film. But the boxes were all done practically, apart from the graphics over the top of them. So in order to get the box to kind of roll over, there's a rod underneath it for me rotating it like that. Each movement of a box, what we call the first movement and the star configuration and the pillar driver, they're all an individual box, usually with me underneath, not being directed by Clive Barker in such a graphic manner, but usually just me underneath pushing and turning and pulling back down, or we had one remote control box. But yeah, there were multitudes of boxes for every shot in order to achieve it. And then we had hero boxes. Even now, I have to say, it's kind of funny. Even watching this movie, there's a shot where she drops the box and it bounces on the floor. I actually felt my testicles cringe slightly, because every time that happened to a box, it's just wrecked completely, because it would always land on the corner and just smash the corner in. So as I'm watching, I'm like, don't drop it. Because usually any scene where there's somebody throwing a box or dropping a box, traditionally I would always be underneath them with a piece of Duvetine or a piece of black wrap or anything, just trying to catch it and make sure they didn't actually really drop it. If you work in films, you'll know, that traditionally actors are always pretty loosey-goosey with props. You're always terrified to give them a hero prop. You know, I've had so many things where actors have gone, "Oh, I didn't know it'd break." You know, yes, I spent hours making that. Thank you. You know, or don't give them a hero one and they're like, "Can I rehearse with this one?" You're like, "No, rehearse with this lump of wood." Because you know, I suddenly decided in the scene that I should smash it with a hammer. You know, that's great. That's 6 months of my fucking life. You know. So yeah, and the Hellraiser boxes always had to be under lock and key, because obviously over the years props became super valuable, and Hellraiser boxes especially were like, you know, rocking horse shit. So people would like, oh, I desperately want one. Until we shot in Romania, where Romanians had no clue what Hellraiser was. I could leave boxes just lying around. They were more interested in food, you know. Like, if there's a chance to take a pizza home, they would be like, yes, sneak that away. But no one gave a damn about Hellraiser boxes. It was the one time and place I could just leave props lying around and know that the crew in Bucharest, they were like, I don't give a shit. But anywhere else, they were under lock and key, and it was like, oh, Hellraiser boxes, and people would be like, yes, this is very, can I have, no, that goes home with me. And the amount of times crew would just come up to me and go, so when do I get a Hellraiser box, man? I'll be like, fucking never.
Now, the front of it, I mean, the intricacies, like if you go online, and this is like geeky me going online and being like, what does all of the different, they have like, this is the plane of despair, and this is,
so the box was created by a guy called Simon Sace. Simon did a beautiful job designing this thing, and he put a lot of stuff in it. There's a female face in it. There are 6 completely individual faces. They're not replicated in any way. The most common thing is that once it goes into the star configuration, when it goes up and turns and looks like a star, if you actually look at it, it's engineers. It's the engineer from Hellraiser 1 chasing them around the box.
Oh, wow.
So it's not dogs. If you actually
I thought it was dogs.
It's the creature with the scorpion tail from the first film, the one in the corridor. Yeah. But they're chasing around the box. And then there are all kinds of little weird things that Simon put into it. But it's a beautiful prop. It was a joy to work on and a pain, because it was filigree brass, so the slightest knock or dink on it would cause a piece to bend and misshapen, and you could never get it back into lay down. Ooh. So they were mahogany cubes with hand-polished brass etchings that were then laid on and glued and then lacquered with 10 coats of lacquer. Wow. And they changed over the films. I did little things differently on each movie, but by and large, I think by Hellraiser Inferno, they were kind of looking the way I like to have them looking, which is they were sealed in the lacquer, so the edges wouldn't get dinked. So they would sometimes catch on people's clothing. Oh, wow. Or they would open it, or they would slice their finger or something on it, you know, because they were, in order to make them look antique, you had to have the etching so it could still be seen.
Yeah. Now, okay, I know you get asked this question at every convention, but I'm doing it start to finish. How long on Pinhead?
Oh, well, good question. If he sits still, he shuts the fuck up. I did do it once we did it, first of all, the record was 1 hour, 27 minutes and like 60 seconds. 59 seconds, sorry. And then on Hellraiser Deader, the producers were like, look, you know, we've got no time at all. And Doug, bless his heart, Doug was like a statue. He just sat there, didn't move an inch. And I went at it, and he'd bet me $100 I couldn't beat the 1 hour, 29 minutes and 57 seconds. He thought there's no way you could do it. And we knew it was going fast. We knew it was going really, really quick. It's on video somewhere. I think it's on the making of Hellraiser Deader. But we pulled it out in just under an hour. Ooh. But that's really rare. And it was on the proviso that it wouldn't fall apart as well, that it wouldn't like stop peeling off. It had to be glued on the stick. But usually, in order to preserve sanity, you know, there's processes where you can kind of, apply it, let Doug go and have a wander around, have a smoke, come back, carry on with the next stage. I would always say to producers, give us 2 to 3 hours to be completely camera ready. Because there's a lot of little details as well. You have to paint his hands. There's a lot of neck work on it, because the neck's always rubbing against the collar. So it's a real pain there. And then the lips are destroying. But I'll say this once, I'll say it twice, I'll say it 1,000 times. No one takes care of a makeup like Doug Bradley. He could eat pizza, he could drink coffee, he could smoke cigarettes and not damage the edges. He was an absolute trooper at taking care of the makeup. Yeah.
Okay, so I know you did exteriors in New York City, but then you did a large amount of the shooting in North Carolina.
Oh, it was all North Carolina, but they did.
We've got some other crew
here.
They
did a day of like second unit just shooting buses and things like that. Most of it's optical processes for the kind of like set extensions or just matte paintings. all headed by Steve Hardy, who was a brilliant production designer who literally made miracles happen. The budget on these shows were very, very low, which is why some of the makeup effects are a bit rough around the edges, because we were literally just running appliances from all kinds of shows. Like I was saying to you, the head that explodes at the beginning, the kid, it's Michael Caine's head from Jekyll and Hyde. We'd done a Jekyll and Hyde show, and we had a Jekyll transformation where Michael's like, so we ran those out of wax and then we blew them up. So when I watch that movie, I'm like, oh, look, it's the body from Children of the Corn 2. Oh, it's the head from Lost Waxworks 3 or 2, you know. It's like, oh, it's so-and-so from so-and-so. Because we were just running appliances. Bob was like, send everything out, whatever you can, just send it to us in North Carolina. They've added a scene where this is going to happen. And originally there was no Barbie Cenobite and there was no CD Cenobite. Mm-hmm. Originally they were just purely victims that occur in the boiler room. So the guys on the ground in North Carolina were going down to like pet stores and buying dog leashes and chains and anything they could hang on it, and buying jeans and spraying them black to make Cenobite costumes.
Now, how did the good people of Greenpoint, North Carolina, take to, like, you know, we're gonna roll in with our like S&M demons and blow up your streets? From
what I heard, I mean, you probably have a better idea.
How were they? Introduce yourself first.
George Reasoner. I was at Grip on, Gary and I were talking. We did Children of the Corn 2 and Hellraiser 3 almost back to back in and around Greensboro. There used to be a little stage in High Point, North Carolina. It was like Greensboro, High Point, Winston-Salem. They call it the Triangle. So there was a stage in High Point where we were based, and then all of the restaurant boiler room stuff was in this old furniture factory in Greensboro. And then the church that she runs into the front of was kind of a stolen shot. I think they got a signature later on, but no church in like the three-city area wanted anything to do.
I get that.
You get that. So the
church being like, we're a little iffy about this scene.
Yes, but the church with the fake Irish priest.
Yeah. Who's actually the casting director?
Yeah, Clay Hill. He's the background casting for Korn. He and his wife were background casting for Korn and for Hellraiser 3. He got put in as the priest, and then they dubbed that horrible Irish voice later on. He had this like sweet, soft voice, and he was a guy from Pittsburgh. He was from George Romero's world.
Well, same with Peter, the bartender. If you'd have heard Peter talk tonight, you'd have heard this kind of higher pitched Liverpudlian, you know, all right there, my name's Peter Atkins. And of course, the bartender's like, can I help you? It's almost like, paging Mr. Herman, paging Mr. Herman. You know, it's like that, you know.
I love he leaned over the opening scene where the gentleman is selling the actual statue to J.P.
Larry
Monroe.
Mortoff.
Yeah, he leaned over, he goes, that's the producer.
Yeah, yeah. He's actually the good producer. Larry Cuppin was the other producer. He's the one with the little doggy, and he was the one that wasn't so liked. He's the one who a lot of the legal rights is why it's in mesh now, because it was Transatlantic Entertainment, and this is where it all got kind of lost in translation about who owns what and what's allowed where and everything else. That's why when you see T-shirts of Hellraiser, usually they're images from Hellraiser 5, you know, and toys are usually licensed. When we did the NECA toy figures, it was everything post. It was very difficult to establish what you could use and what you couldn't use.
It's really convoluted now.
It's a mess.
Yeah, even a couple of years ago, this is like inside baseball, but they were doing, there was one company that had rights to do a Hellraiser prequel that I pitched on, and it was supposed to be kind of the origin story of how Frank and Julia got the box.
Oh, right.
But even that, they were like, we don't even know if we can have a box yet. And I was like, that's a problem.
Yeah, it's kind of weird when you mention that stuff. When I did Hellraiser Judgment, I was like, Chatra was going to be in. I don't care what anyone says. So Chatra was in it, and I'd never really worried about it. And I always assumed that I never got bugged about it because people were like, oh, well, he's been in with a long time. Clearly he knows. Clearly he's on the inside. Same as I've been making Hellraiser. Actually, I shouldn't say this while you're on video. I was going, it's on record now. I won't say that.
But let's talk about making Cenobites. So,
yes, let's talk about making
you got
Cenobites.
to do the Terry Cenobite. How do you, like, ground up think about creating Cenobites?
Well,
Because you got to do that.
A lot of these were pseudo Cenobites, as they were called, which is like kind of, as he actually says, you know, they're kind of hard made. I always believe that the ones that I did post 4 were true Cenobites, where I really got to flex my artistic. And I've always had this strong belief that Cenobites should be disgustingly beautiful, you know. So that's why Angelique is probably the Cenobite that I'm most proud of. You know, I think I got it kind of bang on there. and the wire twins and stuff like that. They were supposed to look kind of like disgusting. That you see them at first and think, wow, they're really sexy. And then as you started to look, you'd realise that they were actually skin flaps and things being pulled around. So, I mean, it's classic prosthetic kind of technology. I mean, a lot of the Cenobites aren't described in the script. Usually it just says Cenobite. And in later scripts it would say Cenobite, ask Gary, you know. And I'd be like, yeah, I got an idea for a Cenobite. Usually I'd always be drawing ideas for Cenobites. It was one of those things that I kind of got just fascinated with over the years. Angelique actually I came in one night and my girlfriend at the time was watching Sister Act 2.
And that's where Angelique came from?
Yeah, it was because I was looking at a nun's whipple and seeing the shape of the whipple and thinking, if that was skin pulled back and attached to the elbows, it would look like the shape of a nun.
Oh my God, I can never watch either of those movies the same way again now.
So sometimes you get ideas from the weirdest of places, and then Siamese twin, it was written as a Siamese twin, and I was like, this is a pain, because doing a Siamese twin as a makeup effects artist is, you've either got to have one person with a rubber head on their shoulder, or it's two people being squished together trying to look like they're one person, if you're not doing any kind of CGI. And I just thought, Greek tragedy, I thought one should be smiling and one should be sad, and we'll twist them together. So, it was always fun to play, and I have a great crew as well, and they would always kind of jump in with ideas as well. But Cenobites were one of those things that I was like, no, they're mine. I get to design these. That was the fun of it.
What was your favorite? What was the most favorite one that you designed?
Angelique, I'm a big fan of it. And then there's a Cenobite that's not really seen. You probably won't even know, but there's a Cenobite called Spike, which I played, and it had a massive spike through it. Oh, and then there's actually a pseudo Cenobite called the Auditor, which of course is the greatest Cenobite ever filmed and put on camera, and that's in Hellraiser Judgment, which I directed and wrote. And acted in. So.
Okay, we can do a couple of audience questions before we run out of time. So does anybody have any questions? He's been here for kind of the whole haul of Hellraiser, so.
Or anything else, if you want to talk Blade or Gone Girl or Scream or any of those.
Hi, I'm Sherry. I just wanted to know, just in general, like, when you started as designer, FX designer and stuff, did you attend art school, or was it something that you just fell into?
So this was like late 80s, and there was no makeup effects schools. You couldn't go and learn it. You could go and learn key makeup, and I never wanted to do beauty makeup at all. All I wanted to do was blood and guts and fucking kill people and rip their heads off. And oddly enough, it's actually Fangoria. Fangoria was the thing that really inspired me. I wanted to be the next, lead singer of Judas Priest or Van Halen. That's what I really wanted to do when I was like 14, 15. And I was playing in a band, and a drummer had this magazine called Fangoria, and I was like, what's this? And it had a scanner's head exploding on it, and I was like, that's amazing. I love horror films, and I opened the pages, and it was dedicated to makeup effects artists who all seemed to have long hair and be wearing heavy metal t-shirts. And I was like, clearly, if you can't do one thing, you do the other thing. And I've since found out that 90% of makeup effects artists in Los Angeles from the 1980s are incredibly proficient musicians. I sing. Greg Nicotero is a guitarist. Norman Cabrera is a brilliant guitarist. It's amazing how much musical people would have gone off into the musical world and become heavy metal bands.
My husband's a drummer, and I directed heavy metal music videos before I started doing
There is
film.
a strong lineage.
Crossover.
So no, when I was like 14, 15, I immediately saw this magazine, went home, got a bag of clay and sculpted a head, and I'll never forget my mom. It was Freddy Krueger. My mom walked in and went, who sculpted this? And I went, I did. And she went, I didn't know you could do this. And I went, I didn't either. But it was just from being interested in it. And then I learned about form and anatomy. But it was literally, I would come home from school and I would sit in my bedroom and sculpt. Or I would get my sister, who was 5 years younger than me, and I would start to put makeup on her. And it started off with raiding my mom's purse, which probably worried my parents in a weird way, but stealing makeup from her and doing bruises and cuts. And then I got a copy of Dick Smith's makeup book and started going through that and doing breadcrumbs and latex. And so it was nurtured natural talent. And I've worked with people who are brilliant artists who've been to art school as well. And what they seem to have is a great fundamental understanding of anatomy, which I didn't get. I had to kind of learn that. But initially, no. Myself and the majority of makeup effects artists I knew had maybe either done some art college, but fundamentally were self-taught. And sometimes I think it's a great benefit. I met a lot of students these days who come to me from makeup colleges, and you know, they'll sit down and they'll say, you know, here's my portfolio, and I go, oh great, so this is from cinema makeup school, and they go yes, and I go okay. Question: cinema makeup school, you're supposed to do 3 makeups, 3 sculptures, 3 molds. How many sculptures and how many makeups and how many molds are in here? 3. Okay. If there's a picture in here of you standing next to somebody like this with a fake head, I'm going to rip it out of you, you know that. And I don't want to see the work that you did on your course. I want to see the work that you did on the weekends and on the evenings and the stuff you were doing for fun. I don't want to see the stuff that you paid $20,000 to be in college for. I want to see the stuff that you were doing for your fun. So sometimes I find that the people who seem, I think, to be the best at this are the ones who have a real passion for it and aren't just doing it 8 hours a day. They're doing it 12 hours a day, 15 hours a day, 7 days a week. And, you know. So yeah, but you can home grow it, is what I'm saying. Really, you don't need to have had you know, it's amazing sometimes you can find people who had no artistic skills that they thought, certainly not that they discovered in school, only to find out that they can become very good makeup effects artists.
Yes. Yes.
So I got a 2-part one.
2, okay.
2-part. Well, one leads into the other. The first is the metal band that's in Hellraiser 3 in the club.
Armored Saint.
Underrated, great band. John Bush, amazing singer. I always wanted to know if there was ever any idea of doing something with them, because you go into the boiler room and there's all these bodies, and you're like, man, it would have been great if there's something had happened with the band.
Right.
But obviously, you probably couldn't get them to come back in. But was there ever any?
All I remember
on
from
that?
the Armored Saint stuff, because I wasn't there, was that the guys who were there,
Yeah.
the effects guys, weren't heavy metal fans, and yet I was like, Armored Saint are there?
Yeah.
What the fuck? Like, that's awesome. And all I heard, that Armored Saint were extremely bored, having to be around all day long and wait around, and didn't understand the concept that, you know, to be in a movie for 2 minutes means you have to be on set for 12 hours. And I'm sure, being young, energetic guys as they were at the time, as I was when I was in a band, you have other things that are preying on your attention than sitting bored out of your brains on set. The other metal question, obviously, or the thing there is the fact that there's the heavy metal. There's the Hellraiser song, which was recorded by Ozzy Osbourne, written by Lemmy
Ozzy
Kilminster,
Lemmy, yeah.
but it's Motorhead doing it, and Clive Barker actually directed the video for that. So.
Yes.
And then Ozzy cut a version on No More Tears.
That's right.
The second part of the question, though, because it's like, I wish something could have been done with the band. It would have been fun. Is there something that was, because these movies can be very ambitious.
Yeah.
I know they don't always get across everything that you want. Is there a Hellraiser creature or design, a Cenobite, something that was just never fully realized?
From 3.
From any of the Hellraiser
Yeah.
things? Like, is
Oh.
there something you never were able to do? Because I think about Bloodlines as like this fascinatingly ambitious.
Oh, yeah.
movie.
Oh my gosh.
Like,
Oh, we could
It's
talk all
wild.
day about
Stories
Hellraiser
across
Bloodline.
I could
periods
teach a whole
of
class
time.
on bloodlines.
And they spent money on it, but obviously not
Oodles of money.
as much as they probably could have, considering. But
The hilarious
that's
thing
like
about
an example,
Bloodlines
like-
is, just to let you guys know, we did a 6-week shoot of Hellraiser Bloodlines. And then we went back 6 months later, fired the director, got a new director in, did a 2-week reshoot. Then 3 months later, did another 2-week reshoot. Then 3 months later, did another 2-week reshoot. Then 3 months later, did another 1-week reshoot. It was the film that would not end. I had a friend of mine who actually plays Chatterer in the last few movies. And he went and did Nutty Professor 2 at Rick Baker's studio. And when he came back, I was like, are you available to work? And he's like, yeah, I'm available. And he'd done the original Hellraiser Bloodline shoot. And he came back in. He said, what are we working on? I said, Hellraiser Bloodline. And I was like, what the fuck? We were working on that a year ago. I was like, I know. It will not end, ever. And we shot.
It does go through multiple different kind of areas that, you know,
Well,
in
like
times.
timeline.
And yeah, it's got a lot going on.
Yeah,
there.
it's crazy. And it was a very, you know, it was a big, bold idea. And unfortunately, I don't think Kevin was the right person for it, you know, and I don't even know if the film at the end is really the right movie. It's a shame, because when you look at how much money was spent on it and what was behind it, and Dimension, I know there's a lot of slagging off about Dimension and the Weinsteins and all that kind of stuff. Not that one Weinstein, he deserves the slagging off he gets, but Bob's a decent enough guy. But Dimension always tried to do something different. They were never like, oh, let's just go away and repackage the same thing. And they were trying to use different scripts. And yes, people say, oh, it's shoehorned in and all that. But they were trying to definitively do something strange and unusual each time. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. I personally believe that Hellraiser, as is proved by the Brooklyn version, is a very, very hard concept to get into a commercial film world. It just doesn't really work. And also, what was very taboo in 1987, with piercings and flesh and this kind of stuff, S&M, yeah, is he's so by the book these days. It's like you walk around and people, you know, within years of Hellraiser, we have people doing stigmata, you know, suspension from wires and stuff like this. And you go around now, people have got, you know, lugs in their ears, and they've got facial, you know, changes and studs and piercings. It's not as taboo and scary as it once was. And Dimension were always very afraid of the sadomasochistic stuff. They were. I mean, that was the hardest thing for me, was getting, you know, a script, and they go, well, or pitching ideas for Hellraiser scripts and saying, we want a Hellraiser script, but we don't want any Cenobites, we don't want any sadomasochistic stuff, we don't want any sick, twisted pleasure stuff, we don't want any, you know, kind of the weird, creepy stuff. And you go, well, what the fuck's the point? You know, the big one for me was 1996, we just released Hellraiser Bloodline, and I had a concept for a film called Hellraiser the Holy War. And it was the idea of a priest getting the box because he believed that through perpetual suffering he would be entered into the kingdom of God. So he kind of goes after the Cenobites. And the day I had the pitch written out, I had all of the kind of storyboards, and the weekend that I went to pitch it, on the Monday, Scream came out.
Oh, wow.
And Bob was just like, nah, kids running around being chased by a guy in a mask. Weird Cenobite demons with a fetish for S&M. No. And that's
feels like
why.
they were always at a certain point trying to just make Pinhead a slasher hero.
Yeah, and he's not a slasher hero at all. He's too eloquent. He's too, you know. It's, again, even watching this, it's a very different Pinhead movie because he's separated. So at times he is a bit of a kind of a one-liner, a wisecracker. You know what I mean? And it works. I mean, it's kind of funny. I mean, the one line that made me laugh is when she, you know, that classic line. He's like, "There's no such thing as demons," and she goes, "Well, what the fuck is that?"
I know.
You know, I still think that actually works really well as a one line.
No, this one was definitely pushing, because I watched 1 and 2 just 2 weeks ago, and there are very few. I mean, like, he's still quippy, but not quite to this degree.
Oh, in 1 and 2? In 2, a couple of little lines, but in 1, he's straight up, it's very serious.
Yeah.
He never makes a joke at all.
Yeah,
It's
and
very
this
serious.
one is very much like, ha ha, like,
Yeah.
it's just, he's continuously mocking the whole time.
He is. And I mean, there were a couple of times in the sequels where both me and Doug, they'd have a line, and I'd be like, what about that? And Doug would be, what do you think? I'd be like, you can't say that. That's fucking terrible. And Doug would be like, how about that? And be like, yeah. And Doug would manage to, and also Doug's delivery. Doug was a master of being able to take what is potentially a very, very cheesy line and turning it into, giving it some credibility. You know, he's got that great Shakespearean brogue, and he never ever dialed it in and never ever camped it up. He always knew that, kind of like, I mean, I think Doug is reminiscent. I was watching, again, a film that will completely, I doubt anyone knows it, but there's a film called Island of Terror. It's a cheesy. Oh, wow! Look at that. Well, Peter Cushing, and it's a cheesy monster movie with these creatures that go around sucking your bones out of you. You know, I mean, if there could be. But Peter Cushing had such an amazing ability to deliver the most ridiculous dialogue, or to be in scenes that were crazy, but also be so stoic that you bought it. You believed his every line. You know, and you know that's why he's a great Grand Moff Tarkin in Star Wars. He just never ever. I'm sure that you could literally say, read the packet of this cereal, Peter, and he'd be like, maltose and dextrose, you know, Zachary. You know, he just had a real kind of committed to it. I'm not going to play it up. I'm not going to be like, oh, this is bloody awful. He was always incredibly, you know, sincere. And I think that's what made him a great Van Helsing and a great actor, full stop. And I think Doug had that, you know, he never ever let it drop. And in all his other roles as well, Doug, you can see that kind of, you know, Christopher Lee-esque kind of, you know, stage performer within him.
Well, we are out of time,
Cool.
sadly. I could have talked all night long, but thank you guys
Clearly,
so much for joining us. Hellraiser 3, Carrie Cunitland, thank you USC for letting me do this wild
Thank you for
stuff
coming.
here.
I appreciate
Yeah.
it. It's amazing. I was expecting like 4 people and a dog.
Other than the dog.